The views and opinions expressed by participants in the following public affairs program do not necessarily reflect the position or beliefs of WDEF or its staff.
Since 1954, this is Point of View, the world record-holding public affairs program produced at the studios of WDEF-TV Chattanooga and with underwriting community support.
Thank you for tuning back in to another episode of Point of View. I'm your co-host, Nayara Cancel, and my other co-host with me today is Nikki Nicholson. We're going to talk about how to become a survivor of domestic violence. Here from Partnership is Bergen, and I'm going to let you say your last name. I've been practicing all day.
Of course, Bergen Aldair.
Aldair. I'm going to get it, I promise.
And my mother's still working on it. Sometimes I still have my days too.
I completely understand. Bergen, we asked multiple people to come on the show as a survivor of domestic violence, and everyone was afraid to show their face on camera. Why is that?
You know, it's really interesting. Right now, if you're looking in the news feed, you see all of this Me Too, Me Too, Me Too about sexual assault. Where you can have the same person be repeatedly a repeat offense. But domestic violence, it's a lot more difficult to have survivors who are able and at a place where they can speak out and not be in harm's way. It's difficult.
Before we talk about being a survivor, how do you even begin to get help? I know we talked about that in another episode about a year ago, but just briefly, how do you get help?
So for us with Partnership, we have we run the only domestic violence shelter in our area. We serve Hamilton and Marion County, and we have a 24/7 crisis hotline, 755-2700, where people can call and you can work with a caseworker who can strategize a plan. Something new that we have now is an assessment tool that we've partnered with CPD, Chattanooga Police Department, that are used. So when they get sent to a situation where they're responding to domestic violence, they could administer a very quick survey to the victim. And just a few simple questions can give, it's called a Lethality Assessment, an LAP. They can understand the level of danger scientifically that this victim is in becoming sadly a homicide statistic. And so they can, at that point, the officer can say, you know, okay, we do know that your abuser has guns in the home. One of the questions, have they ever threatened animals or children or you to kill you? Answering yes to just a few of these questions will trigger the officer to immediately call our crisis hotline and arrange a safe refuge if that victim will go.
What would you say to the outsiders, outside looking in, at the victim's life and what's going on? As far as, you know, a lot of people say, well, if they wanted to really get out, they could get out. Or, you know, she must really like it, or he must really like what's going on because this keeps happening, this cycle keeps happening in their life. What would you say to the outsiders looking in? And also, is this the same type of, would you say the same thing as also to rape victims?
Right, and this is something that is so sad that we see time and time again. Speaking to rape and domestic violence, these crimes are crimes of power. So this is never about someone with gets a little angry, or they drink too much and get a little mad, or, oh, you know, he was just turned on. No, this is a crime of power and control, period. And so when you look at, and which you did, and I'm thankful that you brought up some of these common stereotypes that, oh, you know, if she wanted to leave, she could. And that is just sadly very much not the case. By the time that a victim of domestic violence has this realization that they need to leave, if they are fortunate enough to get to that point where they know that they need help, that is when they are in the most dangerous of situations. And in fact, that window of leaving an abuser is when the instances of homicide skyrocket.
Let's jump to being a survivor. You've come and you've gotten help from Partnership or any other organization. You've gotten help. What is the process post getting help? What's the lifeline after after you've gotten the help? What's the process to becoming a survivor?
You know, I think it's unique for each person, but life can be beautiful again, and I think that that's the overarching message. Just as life after a car accident isn't going to be the same if you're a little nervous to get back on the road, each person's individual path is going to be different, but there are certainly, Partnership provides resources for counseling, which we strongly encourage. Also resources for counseling for sexual assault. So we encourage continued counseling, but you can rebuild your life again. While you're staying in our shelter, that's when these victims are working on getting new jobs, setting up a new life. Oftentimes people forget that our shelters house children, and so these kids are starting at new schools, they're working on getting a new residence. Life looks utterly different, but it looks safe and empowered.
Really quickly, before we end this show, are there any signs that a victim or a past victim or someone that may feel like they're going towards becoming in this situation, any signs to look for?
Sure, you want to look for, because physical abuse is often a part of domestic violence, but not always. But what almost is always encompasses physical, emotional, sexual abuse in an intimate relationship is the financial abuse. So someone who has limited access, if any access to their finances, someone who has limited access to mobility, family, friends. Is this someone who you see increasingly becoming isolated, becoming anxious, very nervous about what their partner is going to think, do, say, and for situations that don't seem like something would be a big deal about?
Once you're a survivor, I know that many people go back to their abusers, but what is the best way to keep from going back to your abuser?
Staying in counseling, continuing, particularly if you're in our shelter, that's where you have your network. You've got your caseworkers, your court advocates, your counselors. It's hard because, and as foreign as it sounds to somebody who's not in a relationship that's violent, the person who is experiencing that abuse truly does feel love for their abuser. And so it is difficult for them to leave, and they often do go back. But that's because sometimes they've become so comfortable to operating in that established pattern, and now life is brand new, and I don't know what it looks like over here, but I knew what this was.
We don't have much time left, and I know that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and you have an event coming up. Can you tell us more about that? We
do, and it's something that we want the whole community to participate in if we can. It's Purple for a Purpose on October 25th.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
So what we really want is for people to put on something purple. It can be as simple as purple nail polish, or as simple as a purple sticker, or a whole purple outfit.
Okay.
But we want to start a conversation because we believe, just as you said, it's difficult to get someone on the show. It's difficult to have these conversations. So we have to find ways to make this more conversational so that we can truly tackle this problem head on. So you can wear purple. And you can tell everybody why you're wearing purple on the 25th. You can wait for somebody to ask. But the point is, we want victims, survivors to look around and feel supported. And we want to start a conversation to change this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I hope all of us wear purple on the 25th of October. Up next, we're going to talk about DACA, where the children of illegal immigrants can stay in this country, when Point of View continues.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm your co-host, Melody Shikari, and today we are here with Amber C., an immigration attorney with Leicester Law. How are you doing, Amber?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Melody.
Well, great to have you today. We're going to talk a little bit about DACA now and Dreamers in America and in Chattanooga. Who are Dreamers, and why are they in the news so often?
Well, I'm really glad you asked. It's definitely been something that's in the news a lot as far as immigration goes, probably one of the #1 things lately. And I think everyone knows probably a little bit about them, but maybe they don't know the full story and who it involves and how many people it's affecting. But basically the DREAMers, or DACA, which stands for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was a program that was originally started by President Obama back in 2012. At the time, Congress, couldn't get a DREAM Act actually passed to help the they estimate 1.7 million children who were brought to the United States when they were children by their parents who were without status. So this program was put in place because Congress could not pass legislation to provide a pathway for status for them. So then Obama stepped in and did this through executive action.
Right. So to clarify, these are kids that came across the border when they were kids. They might be adults at this point that don't have paperwork. They haven't gone through the traditional channels of getting immigration in this country.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
They had to have been younger than 16.
Okay. And so, it's been in the news. There's been some updates. What has happened recently? Why is this an issue now?
Well, basically, during the campaign with Trump, he'd gone back and forth about whether he was going to continue the program, and he had made promises that he would, and then that he was going to end it. And on September 5th of this year, there was a group of states that had threatened to file a lawsuit if Trump didn't take action. And so in anticipation of that, he ended the DACA program on September 5th, and basically has kind of punted it to Congress and said that, you guys need to step in and fix this because he's now ended the program. They're not going to accept new applications.
Okay. So what happens? So you're undocumented. You might have a temporary type of visa in order to go to school or to work, and it's going to run out at a particular time point, and there's no pathway to citizenship legally at the very least, right?
Right.
Okay. So the big question is, in our community, I'm sure as well, why should we care? Why is this an issue that someone who does not fall into the program should be concerned about?
Well, I think that your average Chattanoogan and American really should be concerned about this because we're talking about children. We're not talking about adults. You had to have been here before you were 16. You had to have gone to school here. That was part of the requirement. So you had to have either gotten your GED, been currently enrolled in school, or graduated, or been honorably discharged from the military. So these were kids that this was their home essentially. They had to have no serious convictions. They had to show they had been here since 2007. That's another requirement, continuously. So these were kids that, again, were brought here. Some of them did not even know that they didn't have status until they were applying for college. They thought their whole lives that they were here with status. And many of them are, through this program, were able to get work authorization, work, pay taxes, contribute. They were able to go to college, not for free, and not through. They weren't in most states not eligible for student aid, financial aid. But I know many of them that are nurses, nurse practitioners. I'm just thinking of people that I think
one recently got a leadership award in Chattanooga for their contributions to our community and in education. So these are not folks that are just hanging around. They're actually contributing to our community. I think you had mentioned to me earlier that some of their visa runs out, they're going to be sent back to wherever it is that they might have come from years and years and years, over a decade or 2 decades ago. Is language going to be an issue for some of these folks, and professional language? Yes,
many of these kids, they don't speak Spanish, and once DACA runs out in March, or when it does end, they have no other status. There is no, under the law right now, there is no other pathway for them to become citizens, to get a green card. It just doesn't exist. So that's all they want. People ask us as immigration attorneys, why don't they just become legal? Why don't they just, get their citizenship? Well, they can't. The way the law is currently, they can't. And there is no exception because they were children. And there's no exception because they didn't necessarily make the choice to be brought here. And so they're basically stuck. Many of them, this is their country. They don't speak Spanish. They would be sent back to a country where many of them no longer have any family. And they have other brothers and sisters who've now been born in the United States. So they literally would be The only
alone.
one.
They'd
Yes.
be alone in a country that they really weren't raised in. I know we talk a lot about Latin countries and Hispanic countries, but there are some, I think of South Korea and some other countries where it's not that the country they're coming from is terrible, but they don't know the customs. They don't know the way that money and jobs and insurance and all these things work in those places, because it all differs by country. Well, you know, you're a legal expert. I know we've seen some updates. What can we look forward to in the near future? Do you think there are going to be some court challenges? There's going to be some other lawsuits coming down?
Yes, there already actually have been. After President Trump rescinded the executive order on September 5th, a few weeks afterwards, there's a legal challenge saying that, you know, the way he did it violated due process. He gave them essentially less than a month for all of them to get their renewals in. That renewal deadline has already passed. It was October 8th. And so people were scrambling, and you know, it affected over 800,000 people.
Wow.
And they estimated that, you know, unfortunately, a large chunk of those people missed out on this renewal possibility.
Wow.
And so yes, there already are challenges. I guess my advice is that if this is something of concern to you or to, you know, any of the viewers, that they should contact their congressmen and their senators and make sure that they know that they believe that Congress needs to step in and do something.
Well, so that's really good advice. So if you do care about it, you got to get in touch with maybe an attorney if you know somebody that this applies to, and B, Congress has the ball in their court right now. So really, that's where the action is happening in terms of what happens with this. You work at Lester Law, and you know, as some people have mentioned to me, there are some videos. You guys post updates on immigration issues regularly on Facebook.
We try every Friday to have a new Facebook video with whatever, because things have been changing so quickly. So every
that's
Friday.
a way to get in touch. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Amber, for coming on the show and telling us a little more about a very complex issue. What's it like to survive a hurricane? We'll get a first-hand report when Point of View continues.
We need a claim number?
When I started taking care of Mom, I didn't realize the challenge of playing so many roles. But above all, I'm still her daughter.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving. We're here to help.
Thank you for tuning back in to Point of View. I'm Nayara Cancel. The truth of the matter is that the United States have been hit by several natural disasters within the last couple of months. Puerto Rico was hit by Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria 1 week apart. Here to talk to us about that is Sylvia and her daughter Sylvia. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Nayara, for having us
today. Sylvia, you were there during the hurricane. You actually live in Puerto Rico. Can you tell us about how you prepared for the hurricane?
Well, I was prepared as usual because we heard about hurricanes in Puerto Rico very often. But we were not prepared for a huge hurricane, never, never.
What does preparing as usual mean?
As usual is you go to the market to buy some of the things that you know are you going to use to eat if there's no light or no water. You buy water. And
for how many days?
We learned that we should be prepared for 3 days almost.
Okay. So you prepared for Hurricane Irma?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
How did you prepare for Hurricane Maria? Or were you even able to?
Well, I prepared because I was prepared because I bought water, a lot of water for me, and I bought the things that I knew in other times were easily for me to be preparing. For example, sport sodas, with small cans of.
Did the Puerto Rican civilians, the residents of Puerto Rico, and the Puerto Rican government feel that this was going to be such a massive hurricane, this being Maria?
No. It took us by surprise. I think that no one knew what's coming to Puerto Rico at the end. We thought that this was something that when we prayed that God was going to turn the hurricane to the sea, and we were not going to have the problems.
Which oftentimes happens, that it just kind of bypasses, it's coming towards it and bypasses it.
Yes.
I know that you went to a friend's house to find rescue before it even hit. But while Maria was actually passing through the island, what were your thoughts? What was that feeling inside of you?
Well, something that matters me was that when they showed the hurricane coming to Puerto Rico, it was like the island.
Wider than the island.
The magnitude was, and I said, we could not do anything. I should get out. And it was something so surprising for everyone. I saw the older people in my building walking very fast.
What was your feeling at the time where, I know you said there was a specific noise, there was a specific feeling. What was that like?
It's something that you should live. To explain is very difficult. We just heard huge noises. We learned that the neighbors were suffering because we heard when everything gets up from the next house, like a bomb was exploding, like bump, and it was the fence, then another part, then the roofs. Everything was running around, the trees.
My mom also lives in Puerto Rico. She retired from here and moved there, and I know she said entire cylinder block houses were on other houses. I know that's very difficult. After the hurricane happened, do you feel that you got, not only you, but Puerto Rico got relief fast enough?
No. We were not prepared, and the governor knew that it was a very strong, the category was almost 5, but no one could say something that you don't know. You could not explain what you don't know. The reality is like a nightmare. There's no explanation to what we saw the next day. Everything was so different.
Why do you think, Sylvia, I'm going to ask you, Sylvia mother and now Sylvia daughter, why do you think the relief efforts have been so hard to connect to the people?
Well, I think in the first place, the lack of communication has interfered with all of the organization's ability to assess the size of the damage. I think that, like Mami was saying, no one was prepared. I don't think Puerto Rico knew the lack of infrastructure and sustainability that they had from water, from communication, and from the power perspective. So I think that the fact that it took everyone by surprise, people were not prepared to aid immediately. And the needs and the necessities changed so drastically overnight that it was like taking a rug from underneath everyone.
Many people have described it as there is relief coming in, but the devastation is so much that the relief efforts are not enough. There are 3.7 million people without communication, without water, without food, without everything that they have ever known. And they even say the United States knows more about what's going on than we do because we don't know beyond what we can see. With that being said, I know that there are many organizations helping Puerto Rico. The government is helping. There are many civilians as pop stars. I know Somos Una Voz happened last weekend, which is they collected Mark Anthony and J-Lo and A-Rod collected $35 million through a concert, which was great. And there is other people like Bethany Franco, who has chartered, and the list goes on and on and on. However, what does the Chattanooga area been challenged with to help the relief efforts in Puerto Rico?
Well, I think the first thing that I want to be sure that we understand is I have been felt so proud, or even more pride of being Puerto Rican, because of how much people or how many civilians have been touched by this. Who would have thought that an island 100 by 35 would touch people in such a matter. In Chattanooga, we have the challenge that we are a small community compared to the biggest cities, but we are blessed with the geographical location that we're in, so centric. We have had for years a group of Puerto Ricans being active, and we are extending our voices to collect goods and send them to Puerto Rico.
So there is a national organization, we don't have too much time, so there is a national organization called Puerto Rico Rises, and you are the head of Puerto Rico Rises Chattanooga. And we have a drive going on today, Saturday. Can you tell us more about that and how people can get in contact and how people can help?
Yes, we have a national organization called Puerto Rico Rises. You can visit the website, puertorico-rises.com. We have a Facebook page, Puerto Rico Rises Chattanooga. We're going to have today 2 centers that are going to be accessible for different people in locations, one in downtown Chattanooga at the Camp House, and one in Uruguay, the Samaritan Center. We're going to be collecting goods from 11 a.m. in the morning until 3 p.m.
And for a list of those goods, where can they go to find them?
You could go to either the Facebook page or the PuertoRicoRises.com website.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And Sylvia, it's a pleasure to be with both of you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Point of View. Make sure to come back for next week's. Today is a bittersweet moment. I have been with Point of View for the last 2 years as senior producer and co-host. Though I will continue being around occasionally, it's the last day I sign off as senior producer. I have personal, corporate, and family endeavors I will continue doing, and I want to thank every one of you for tuning in and supporting me and always looking me out in the community. Thank you for being with me throughout the past 2 years. This is Nayara Cancel.
Closed captioning provided by the following.
Funding for this program is brought to you by Barnett & Company, specializing in tax-efficient strategies for the preservation and distribution of family wealth, offering continuous investment management with a focus on long-term strategies. Areas of service include investment, estate, education, and retirement planning. Barnett & Company, the power of compound returns over time. More information can be found on the web at barnettandcompany.com.